So now, I'm moving on to the new lines that were built for the BMT's portion of the dual contracts. First off, we have the 14th Street Eastern Line, which is part of the Canarsie Line of the L train. This line was planned to run from 14th Street in Manhattan to Montrose Avenue in Brooklyn. So, on June 30th, 1924, the first section from 6th Avenue to Montrose Avenue was opened to East New York. Then, there was a proposed extension to East New York, which was originally supposed to be elevated above the LIR's Evergreen branch. But this was never approved, so the extension had to be underground, and eventually opened on July 14th, 1928. Finally, on May 30th, 1931, the full line was opened when the line was extended 2 blocks east to 8th Avenue. Next up, we have the Astoria line of the N&W trains, which opened on February 1st, 1917, starting with the IRG's Flushing line at Queensborough Plaza, before diverging north up to Astoria Ditmars Boulevard. Speaking of Queensborough Plaza, I know I mentioned it at the beginning of this video, but don't worry, I will get to discussing more of that station once I am done listing the rest of the new lines and extensions. I also want to mention that because they are part of the dual contracts, both the Flushing line and the Astoria line were jointly shared by the BMT and the IRT. For this next one, we're going back to Manhattan to look at the Broadway line, today served by the NQ, R, and W trains. The first portion of the line opened from the Manhattan Bridge to 14th Street Union Square on September 4th, 1917, then north to Times Square 42nd Street, and south to Rector Street on January 5th, 1918, and then the line was extended one stop south to Whitehall Street South Ferry on September 20th, 1918. On July 10th, 1919, the Broadway line was extended to 57th Street, and then to Lexington Avenue on September 1st, 1919. And finally, the full line was completed when it was extended under the East River in the north end to meet up with the Astoria line at Queensborough Plaza, and when it was extended under the East River in the south end using the Montague Street Tunnel to head into Brooklyn. Next up, the Brighton Line of the B&Q trains, which if you remember from my last video, then you would know that its right-of-way was originally owned by a company called the Brooklyn, Flatbush, and Coney Island Railway. As part of the dual contracts, the Brighton Line would become elevated, which was common among the lower Brooklyn subway lines. The contracts also rerouted the line to head underground from Prospect Park to DeKalb Avenue, and this extension eventually opened on August 1st, 1920. Then we have the 4th Avenue line of the R train, which was intended to replace the 5th Avenue elevated in Brooklyn. On June 22, 1915, the line was opened to connect up with the Sea Beach line near 59th Street Station, and then to 86th Street on January 15, 1916, and finally on October 31, 1925, the final extension of the line was completed to Bay Ridge 95th Street. Now, there were also planned extensions from the 4th Avenue line to the Staten Island Railway, which never happened, but there is still a remnant of its tunnel provisions in the tunnel near 36th Street Station. Next, we have the Fulton Street line of the A train, which had an extension east of Grant Avenue Station to become elevated to head to its terminal at Lefferts Boulevard. This extension opened on September 25, 1915, with a third track to facilitate some of the express trains. The extension would also be used to connect up with the now abandoned Fulton Street Elevated. You can actually see a remnant of that connection as you're on a Manhattan-bound A train just before you head into the tunnels after leaving 80th Street Hudson Street Station. Then we have the Jamaica line of the J and Z trains, which extended east from Cypress Hills to 168th Street in Jamaica. Cypress Hill Station would be completely relocated as a result of the tight curve the extension had to take. But you can still see a remnant of the trackways for the original station at the intersection of Crescent Street and Jamaica Avenue. Also, the elevated portion between 121st Street Station and 168th Street Station would eventually be abandoned in 1977 and 1985, and the Jamaica line would instead go underground to meet up with the IND's E train along the Archer Avenue line to head to Jamaica Center Station. The last new line for the BMT's portion of the dual contracts is the Nassau Street line of the J and Z trains, which was extended south from Chambers Street Station, with intermediate stations at Fulton Street and Broad Street, before connecting up with the R train just before the Montague Street Tunnel. If you remember the days when the M train was brown, then you would know that it used to run through the Montague Street Tunnel to head south to Brooklyn. However, in 2010, the M train was rerouted to head uptown along the 6th Avenue line and the Queens Boulevard line. But the tunnel that connects the Nassau Street line to the Broadway line and the Montague Street Tunnel is still there, and you can look straight into it as the train terminates at Broad Street Station. So that finishes off all the new lines and extensions from the dual contracts. I know there are a lot of them, but its legacy is crucial because it introduced subway lines that are so familiar to New Yorkers, which they rely upon in their daily commute. The subway system as we know it today would definitely not have been as extensive if not for the dual contracts. It also helped to promote development, as houses sprang up wherever the new subway lines were at. People were able to move away from the congested areas of the city, which helped to keep businesses afloat. This also lessened people's chances of contracting diseases from crowded populations. From 1910 to 1920, the dual contracts caused a decrease of people residing in Midtown and Lower Manhattan. As promised, I will be talking about the station that started off this video, Queensborough Plaza, which, as I said from the beginning of this video, is the only station in the New York City subway in which A division cars and B division cars share the same platform, especially on two different levels. This station is meant to act as the actual starting point for both the Flushing line and the Astoria line, So, I guess you could say that this station symbolizes the agreement between the BMT and the IRT as a result of the dual contracts. Now, looking outside of the station, or in this case on Google Earth, you can kind of see a space where another platform could actually be at. Well, this was actually the case. When the IRT's 2nd Avenue elevated used Queensborough Bridge to cross into Queens, it stopped at Queensborough Plaza and had its own set of platforms at that station with a lower level and an upper level. Unfortunately, that northern half of platforms were demolished in 1964, but there are still a lot of remnants you can see of its track infrastructure all around the station. Okay, that finally concludes this super long video that I probably should have written a shorter script for. But then again, I might as well tell you information about the lines that are derived from these contracts. My next video will be more about facts about the New York City subway, and no, it's not Secrets of the New York City Subway Part 5, but I think you'll still enjoy it. However, it will be significantly shorter than this video, as researching all the lines from the dual contracts and then editing a map for each of them was very exhausting for me, so I hope you understand. But anyways, if you did enjoy this video, consider subscribing and liking this video. I'll see you next time.